Good morning, everybody. Hilda Gann, People Bright Consulting. And thank you for joining me on my series called COVID-19 Tough Decisions for Business Owners. We are doing episode 29 today, Mental Exhaustion, How to Refuel. I think a lot of us are feeling like, oh my God, like now what? We just been through this for 7, 8 months in Canada, and other parts of the world have been going at this in a COVID-19 world since November 19th. So it's a long, long haul for all of us. So we started this series a week after Canada, and particularly Ontario, had their social isolation lockdown. And so we decided that this was something we wanted to do to help business owners, decision makers, human resources professionals really understand what's happening right now. And those first weeks were really trying to understand what social distancing meant, what essential services were, and we've continued to do that. Today we're on episode 29. If you like us, tag us at People Bright or at #COVID-19 TDBO. So what we're going to talk about today is three things. First of all, how to identify excess stress and burnout in ourselves and others. The second thing is how to manage mental health for yourself and for the staff that you lead. And then how do you help others get the help that they need when they have mental exhaustion? And so the focus is really how to refuel. So let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Hilda Gann, as you know, and I founded People Bright Consulting because I really wanted to help business owners and HR professionals understand what it takes to make a strong and healthy company. That means I'm a full service HR consulting. I do provide services from all aspects of HR, including recruiting and compliance. But the other thing that I actually enjoy doing the most is really helping people with their people management skills. And I created a concept called Connect with Rev Up. My husband and I had our own engineering company, and we built that company to 125 people, 7 offices across Canada. And we did want to make it special. We did want to make a strong, vibrant work culture. And we were recognized as one of the top 10 best workplaces in Canada. So when we sold the business, I decided that of all the things I did corporately, the HR part resonated with me. Recently, I started a podcast called Rev Up Your Potential. And the focus on that is really helping business owners, decision makers, or even people planning their careers. Lessons learned from people in the industry, business owners that talk about their struggles and successes. So if you're interested, join me on that. I want to do a what we call Menta Meter. I want you to describe in one word what you're feeling right now. Just one word. And Jenny's going to describe how to do that.
Yeah, so just go on menti.com and use the code 1984958, and you should be able to put in three submissions per session. And if you want to have more than one session, you just refresh this and do it again.
So you'll need to know that. For now, just one word that describes how you feel. So go ahead and put it into the Mentimeter. If you're just a reminder, put yourself on mute if you haven't already done so. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. So far we've got the one word that people feel. Somebody feels motivated. Somebody feels burnt out, stressed, and tired. Unhappy. It's tough. It's tough right now, isn't it? I feel that September was almost, that September is always that time of renewal. Kids are going back to school, summer's over, and people should feel refreshed. But with COVID going on in Canada now for, 7 months, this is why I created the topic to talk about today, because I think we are all mentally exhausted. A couple of things: I've got a content, a happy, unhappy, unsure, and then the ones we already talked about, drained. Thank you for sharing that. I want to, I want to have this discussion with you today. And I do encourage people to put comments in the chat line. If you feel you want to say something, you want to come forward, put it in the chat line. Jenny is there to keep an eye on things, and she'll say somebody wants to come forward and chat. So this is an opportunity to do that if you'd like to. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is that first point. Let's talk about what is excessive burnout and stress in yourselves and others, and how do you identify that? So I want to do a poll now. So in the last 3 months, identify if you've experienced any of the following. So go ahead, and Jenny's going to pull up the poll right now and ask that you start to complete the poll, and then we'll see what the results are. Yeah, it is a difficult time, and there's a difference between stress and excessive stress. And I'll kind of talk about them, and it's probably showing up in a slide later. But stress is something that we all have. If you don't have stress, that the definition of no stress is death, because everybody always has a certain amount of stress. It's when it becomes sustained and long term that people become burnt out. And so this is something I want to talk about further. How's the poll going?
Yeah, people are entering.
Someone says it only allows you to select one option.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, feel free to put it in the chat.
Put the one option in then, and then add to it in the chat box if you don't mind.
The other one should be multiple choice.
Yes, yes. Okay. So are we ready to close the poll, Jenny? Have a look at it, the results.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it is single choice. So people are physically tired most days during the day, tend to be more negative, and lack the motivation to get work done. Yeah, and then the other one, which is majority, I feel overwhelmed at times.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that then. It is, it burnt out isn't, is where it's sustained. You can have episodes where, maybe you're having a more stressful day than other days. Can we go to the next slide, Jenny? So I want to give you some statistics to help kind of put it in perspective. So what they predicted in 2020 with the onset of COVID-19 is that depression was going to be the number 2 cause of disability in 2020. And whether that's flipped over to become the leading illness in 2020, I'm not exactly sure, but statistics are showing 42% of Ontario's adults have increased their use of substance and gambling to get through this pandemic. We know statistically that in any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental illness or addiction problem. And I think those numbers are showing. A recent study said that 81% of Canadian workers report mental health impacts during COVID-19. 81% of us. So it is prevalent. And the cost to society, the World Health Organization says that depression and anxiety globally will affect the economy to the tune of $1 trillion in lost productivity. And they've identified recently that that burnout is considered an occupational phenomenon. So what I want to share with you is what we do next. And I think it has to do with the sustaining. Remember what I said earlier. Stress is inevitable. We all have it, but we want to keep it healthy. And right now, it's very, very hard because it's just sustainable. It's been 7, in some cases, 11 months in other parts of the world. So what you are experiencing is everything coming up at once. It's affecting your personal life, it's affecting the work life, and then externally and globally all at the same time, the social and the political and the economical impacts, both at a global level and personally, because we don't know whether we have enough money to bring in. There's so much uncertainty, and now there's issues like Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, and harassment coming to the forefront more than it's ever come before. So what I did was I created this dashboard. I think that's the next slide, Jenny. But first, I want to talk about the signs of burnout. So, how can you tell your employee is getting burnt out? How can you tell that you're getting burnt out? And during the poll, we asked some of those questions. What you'll feel is that you've got this low energy, and I think all of us kind of shared that, where it's hard to start the day, hard to finish assignments, that you'll find that you're sleeping in or taking a little bit longer. And and so there's the you tend to be a little bit more negative and critical, and those the physiological changes. Some people are getting headaches more, they may have a backache or a stiff neck, they're having trouble sleeping. So how do you refuel, and how do you manage mental health for yourself and the staff that you lead? So this is the dashboard I talked about. You know, think about driving a car, and when you're driving a car, you want to make sure that you're optimizing your gas. So you have stress, you have minimal stress to excessive burnout. Because COVID-19 has been sustainable, a lot of us, either consciously or subconsciously, are what I'll call alert. You're alert to potential concerns, potential dangers, impacts that you have. And that's okay when it happens just for, a week or two or three. But when it's sustainable for as long as it is, it can be exhausting. And what we need to do is try to find a happy medium where it's optimal stress and moderate stress. So that's the ideal goal. And so I want to have you share some of your thoughts on how do you refuel. So need to take care of yourself. So again, let's do a Menta Meter and ask the question, how do you refuel? Identify measures that are currently you're using to relax and refuel yourself. So go ahead, the instructions are there. If you've forgotten to use the code, you probably are still connected to the Menta Meter, but if not, there's the code 1984 958. Okay, so we're getting some reactions now. Feel free to put a few more in. The more we share some of our strategies, somebody might say, "Hey, that should I like that idea." So we've got a glass of wine. That sounds really cool. Not check news, outside activity, play with my dog, uh, drink up, chat with friends, chat with friends, chat with friends. I do that too. Talk with family, play with my dog, glass of wine, watch TV, exercise. Great. That's, think about those things that really make a difference for you and to help you stay in check with what you do. I want to share next with you some of the things that I like to do to 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 refuel. But here's some ideas that will help you identify what creates stress and how to minimize it. It's important to get that gauge from excess to back in what I'll call the optimum zone. Optimum zone between a little bit of like moderate stress and a little bit more beyond that, but not much more and not sustainable. Because for some people, stress really excites them and motivates them, but too much stress will lead to the results that we talked about. And some of the things that you can do that people identified was exercise. Exercise is really good because physiologically it creates that ability for you to be re-energized. And I find that taking a walk myself, and they say touching the earth, touching a tree, touching grass really helps to ground you. So definitely, taking walks, doing physical exercise, it really helps physiologically you get back into gear. Mindfulness is another one, meditation, I didn't hear that. Laughter. Laughter again creates the physiological response to help you relax and really de-stress. Make sure you have some self-care time. And if you need it, if your employees need it, then counseling and medication may help to take the edge off of what may feel like a losing battle. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that I like to do to really help my stress level. So early on, I created a positive outlook. I really tried to understand and make sure I felt blessed each day. So stopping and thinking about what it is. Somebody mentioned news. I want to know what's going on, but when it becomes repetitive and it starts having an angle that's very negative and stressful, stop. Stop. I stopped checking too much news. So just enough to understand what's going on, but not enough to feel overwhelmed and invested in all of those concerns. I talked about taking walks. I indulge in few guilty pleasures. So I remember one Chamber of Commerce event where they asked, "What are you doing to indulge?" And I showed a bar of Lindor chocolate. And every week I was buying bars, 4 bars for the family. We have not bought bars for 6 months. We got over that guilty pleasure, found a few others. Laughter. When I feel really stressed, I put on a comedy because I know that by laughing freely, that will help release some of the stress. I'm a sucker for Hallmark movies, and I feel guilty. But what I found out was I heard John Tesh on the radio, and he said that the reason why people like Hallmark movies is because it's a feel good story. It's very formulaic, it's predictable, so it doesn't create too much on my brain. But at the end of the day, I know what's going to happen. I know it's going to be a positive story. So I felt okay now to watch these very uh, formulaic chick type flicks. Massages help me, and that physical energy of somebody, kneading my body and releasing tension. I try to make sure I have me time. And one of the enjoyments that I found out of COVID-19 was family time dinners. We used to eat and run, and now it's a dining experience. We can be at the dinner table for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and those sharing of stories. So many of the things that people put in the into the Menta Meter is some of the things that help me. And what I want you to do is to think about what helps you. What is it that really helps you reduce your stress level? So, some of the things that you can do is really look at building trust in the relationships that you have. Look at how to stay positive and uplift others. Think about social isolation and individuals coping. So one of the things that I think about is when I'm looking at individuals, I'm thinking, how do they want to cope during social isolation? I want you to put in the chat line, are you finding it difficult to go out into social situations? Like people say, hey, come join me at the patio. Some of us are thinking, wow, I want to get out. And so I'll do what I can for social isolation. Hello? Somebody want to say something? Oh, okay. Um, and others will say, no, I'm not going to. Somebody put here, they're having difficulty finding themselves go out and join social gatherings. And I'm finding that some of my friends are going out freely and they'll invite me to go and join them for something. My family, I'm very sensitive to. I have a few people that are really, I'll call it safety conscious, and to them, they really want to minimize the risks. So with respect to them, I'm not going out, but I'm a social butterfly, so I really like to network. I do it through connecting through Zoom and making phone calls. But I think each one of us has to figure out who we want to connect with and who we don't want to connect with from a comfort zone. I know that some of my friends have actually stopped seeing somebody because there's a disparity in the values of how they want to get through COVID-19 and social isolation. Is there another comment? Jenny, has anybody shared any of the comments on that?
No.
Okay. The last thing I want to do is kind of talk about Zoom fatigue. And what are people thinking about Z- Zoom fatigue? Are people feeling that? Just go ahead and put it in the chat line. But I think a lot of people are saying that there is Zoom fatigue. And why is that? You know, we are actually in a situation now where we can physically see people, we can talk to them like we're doing here in this webinar. But that's fine for, 2 or 3 times a day. But some people are literally going from one Zoom meeting to the other Zoom meeting. And why is that more tiring than going from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting? Well, physically, you're walking from one place to another, unless you're sitting in the same place, in days when we could physically see. But the other thing is, when you're in a meeting room, you're only seeing less dimensions than the 3D dimension. So it should be two. But what I find is when you're physically in a room of 12 people, the energy in that room, you can feel it. You can palpate it. You don't have to keep your eyes on 12 people, because when we're in Zoom, we see all 12 if we want to do the gallery view. But when you're in the Zoom meeting, you don't sense the energy of the room. When you're in a room, that's the difference. I remember catching up with a neighbor who we socialized quite a bit, but we haven't been in COVID-19. And we've been doing Zoom meetings, but to physically be across from her, 10 feet, I could feel her energy from there. So when we're in a meeting room, we feel people's energy. We can almost see like the verbal and nonverbal cues. And if we sense something, do you notice sometimes you just veer over to that person because you know they're going to respond and you want to see that response? That's missing in Zoom. You can't feel that. You do feel energy, but not intuitive energy that you feel with your gut. So I think somebody had some comments on the Zoom. Jenny, do you want to share some of those?
Sure. Janine said she definitely has Zoom fatigue and having eye issues, actually, in fact, too. So now she's leaving the computer multiple times during the day, and she went from 1 to 2 hours on the computer per day to 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember in unionized environments, they said that people who were watching computers daily should have a 5 to 10 minute break every hour. So that's a great example of the Zoom fatigue. One of the things you can do to minimize Zoom fatigue is to start just breaking it up with phone calls. And I know that some colleagues that I can talk to, clients are different. You need to make sure you connect. But some people who are your associates, your contacts and colleagues, get together and say, hey, let's do a phone call, let's go for a walk together and chat. So that will help break it up. But yes, definitely, we need to kind of think about that. So what I want to talk next about is this whole idea of how do you help others get the help you need. We've talked about what is stress and excess stress. So for those of us that are feeling somewhat burnt out, recognizing that it's happening and trying to dial it back into that more optimum zone where, some days are overwhelming and some days are good. And so we've all talked about those strategies now, and then we talked about how to help others, because we're trying to help ourselves, and I want to make sure you do that. So this was the thought of doing the discussion about some of those strategies. But now I want you to think about, how do you help others? So this is poll number 2 now. I want you to identify strategies you have to support other people. And if you can pick all that apply.
So guys, this should be multiple choice. So you can pick more than one. Seems like it's working.
Good. I hope that you're finding this session helpful. I think it's time for you to pause and reflect, and and if you are burnt out, trying to figure out, how do you get yourself back to less stressful situation, whether that's some of the ideas that we've talked about, or even getting help, and talking to somebody, speaking with your doctor or a counselor. All right, let's see what the poll says.
Yeah, so majority is on learning and understanding staff concerns that may affect their work. And also majority on connecting with a staff member or multiple staff members who seem burnt out. And then the rest of them are, say, check in with staff for at least 5 to 10 minutes a week, addressing Zoom fatigue, like we just mentioned, and also addressing the business owner or that manager's own mental exhaustion first.
Good, good. Okay, thank you for sharing that, everybody. So
Oh,
what I want to
one thing I want to point out is no one clicked on when I feel stressed and feel like screaming at the staff, I do so. That's a good sign.
Okay, and I hope that everybody believes that. But it's okay for you to think that, and then just park it, right? Oh my God, what is this guy doing? Just think that. Just think that. Okay, but yes, just not. Don't let it get past the mouth, right? So laughter is helpful. So it really does get rid of some of the excess energy. One other thing I thought I forgot to mention is breathing. Breathing is really, really good to help relieve kind of the anxiety level and bring it down. And one of the things that I'll mention too is, when you're breathing, when you have an anxious situation and the two people are upset at each other, start to match the person's breathing and then help them slow it down, because people tend to intuitively just kind of slow down their breathing. So if we can help that. So I want to go into some of these strategies now with you. And if you've been in my sessions before, I always bring up Rev Up, because Rev Up is a set of principles that really can help you in just about any situation. So, how do you help others get the help they need? Well, I created the concept of Connect with Rev Up, and Rev Up stands for 5 principles. So, think about how you apply Rev Up in the situation. When you respect somebody, treat them with equality and value them. So this is all about really listening to somebody, hearing what they're saying, and helping them through that. When we did the poll, I asked questions about, do you spend 5 to 10 minutes, a week catching up with people? When you're putting yourselves in your employee shoes, do you know what that means? Is this a young single person that lives on the 20th floor and never leaves the apartment except every 3 days to go get some food? So really, they are socially isolated. In my household, I'm socially isolated, but I have 5 people. So as I have lots of company. I have lots of communication and connectivity, and I have, touch hugs if I want them. but somebody who's socially distanced doesn't? Is this a person who's a family person? They've got 5 kids or two. That's ridiculous. They have 3 kids or 2 kids, and they're homeschooling them or managing that. So when a person's stressed out, you need to think about the work stress, but also the home stress. And then that's that uniqueness piece. When you understand a little bit more about that person as a whole person, you can support, you can guide, and you can create decisions collectively that will get them to be more engaged, minimize the stress that they have. So what COVID-19 has really taught us is really how to be adaptable and tolerant. And I think we are much more tolerant. And right now, if you've got Zoom, you kind of get an exposure into somebody's home to see who they are. Use that to your advantage during these COVID times to get to know people better and to build a trusting relationship. So, there's a few tips that I want to help you with in terms of mental wellness and COVID-19 is incorporate mental wellness in the workplace. Now more than ever, you really do need to think about that. Provide times where some companies have actually provided a no meeting time. They've declared that between 12 and 1, no meetings will happen. So people can do what they need to do during that time. Some people will incorporate a 5 to 10 minute time to be social at the start of a meeting, a check in, so to speak. And some people will have a weekly or bi week, every other week event where it's social hour. So at 4 o'clock on a Friday, people can bring their favorite beverage or or snack food and then just have chat, and it's obviously not work related, but that may help with mental wellness. The other things, if you have a company that has employee assistance programs, do remind people of its use. It is confidential 24/7. And if you don't, help people with some of the resources that may be useful. At the end of the slides, I do have some sites that you can go to. The Canadian Mental Health Association, um, CAMH. A lot of these organizations really have a wealth of articles and resources that can help people just with mental health, mental wellness, burnout, excessive coping, COVID-19 related stuff. So you can get lost in there just finding stuff that you may want to do. And assessments. There are tons of assessments out there that says, are you burnt out or what's your mental wellness like, that will help you engage where you are. I talked about under the Rev Up process, really connecting with your staff, building that trust. Because when you build trust, then people will be more open to talking about things. They'll feel that that they are valued by you, and in turn, it can improve work culture. Sometimes when we're in a stressful situation together, it really builds the team. So this is something that you can think about doing. And we've already talked about Zoom exhaustion. Other things is you need to think about your workplace because many of us are working remotely, but there are many people who are out there in the front lines. And I remember in the early days when I was grocery shopping, I really thanked the people who were braving themselves out there working to provide us an opportunity to buy the food. I don't do that so much now, and I think what preparing for this session has reminded me is in the early days of COVID, I was really conscious about, focusing, staying positive, and being showing gratitude for those people that are making my life better. So I encourage you to do that as well. There is um, a something I want to share with you. It's called Mental Health First Aid. It is a program that actually helps people, and there's one in Canada, but there's one in many parts of the world, and people are certified to be mental health first aid coaches and trainers. But what I wanted to point out to you is the acronym, because we can all kind of apply this when we're supporting and helping people. First of all, assess the risk of suicide or harm. That's always the first thing that they talk about. So obviously, hopefully you don't have a situation that where a person is suicidal, but if they are, then you need to make sure you get immediate help. If it's not a concern, then listen, and listen in a non-judgmental way. There's such a stigma about mental health, and Julie Holden was on with me last week, 2 weeks ago. We talked about just this whole idea of mental health wellness. This is part two of it, and there is still a stigma, and it's hard to get away with. But the more we talk about it, the more open we are, the more we can create a society where people will talk and listen. And I think that's more evident. And Julie and I talked about it with younger generation. They are more comfortable and open. It's the I think the older generation that lived with a stigma of, you don't talk about these things. They just didn't, and it's uncomfortable for them. But more and more people are open to talking. I remember when my cousin said to me, he said, "I'm so depressed," and I did not realize at the time that she meant that literally, not just as a, oh, we're all so depressed, but we don't really mean that. And she did. But that was at a time before mental health was really a big concern that we should be thinking about. So try to listen, and listen non-judgmentally, because sometimes people just have to talk and listen. Give reassurance and information that will help them. Encourage the person to get the appropriate professional help if that's it, and then encourage other supports that will help them. We're not specialists in this area, most of us, but what we can do is try to help as best we can, and to start to learn how to do that. I want to share next with you the resources that we have, that we've put on the website for you. So here they are, and you have a copy of this later, so I'm not going to go into it, but certainly CAMH's and CMHA, so the acronyms are switched, are really good sources for you to look at. The the next thing I want to talk about is just to open it up to questions and comments, and just sharing some of your thoughts on this. I know myself that I have 5 people in my household. Three of us are working. One's at school, and the other one is at home as well. So we're all adults. And what I realized during COVID is that each one of us is different in the way we cope with it. And particularly for my children, I had to be very conscious of finding out what it was that how they were being impacted by COVID-19, and how best to support them and reduce their stress levels. So this gets back to that Rev Up process. I listened, and I have extremes. I have one person who is really, really hyper alert, safety conscious. And he's the one, when we order out, which we do once a week, he and I are the only ones that can bring the food into the house and prepare it so people can start to plate the food. So we on our stove, we know that the stove is where all of the food comes in, and it is, that's the dirty area. And so we'll clean that afterwards with alcohol. So everybody else knows that they're not as conscious as he is. And then I have one person who's going out regularly. So sitting down with him and talking to him about what he needed to do to keep the family safe, and things in between. So that's the kind of things that I'm thinking about. I want to open it up now for questions and comments and sharing. And before we do that, just finish off with some slides, and then we can do a gallery view. So let's finish off these slides. I offer a 30-minute discovery call to just have conversation. It can be about anything. It can be about the mental health and wellness. It can be about other aspects of COVID-19 and how people are coping, or just about human resources and how you're managing during COVID times, and how we might be able to help you. So that's there for you. I want to remind you that we do have webinars, and our the one coming up in 2 weeks' time is um, H is recruiting 101 is what we call it. The do's and don'ts of effectively hiring. And my guest will be executive recruiter Perry Najati. Between the two of us, we counted over 50 years of recruiting experience. So I think you're in for a treat to hear our experiences and share them with you. And then the last thing I want to do is share with you that we have been doing the COVID-29 series for 29 episodes. So it is available. You'll get a copy of it afterwards and it's there. So here's a list of them. So I want to open it up for questions and comments, and I also want to thank Lauren Davey from the East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce. They are our sponsors, and they have been doing so since June. So really appreciate that. Lauren, do you want to just come out and say a few words and maybe start the comments and the questions?
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much. It's we've been doing these sessions since June with Hilda and Jenny, and it's been wonderful and great to work with you and to sponsor these events. Today's topic was an amazing one. I felt it was good to talk about the stresses and the things that COVID has brought to everybody and how we're managing it. And I know for myself, we're the same in our house, Hilda. We have some people, everyone's a little bit different, right? Some people want to, will touch the groceries when they come in and others won't. And so there's different ways that people are coping, and you're learning to manage and live with people in your house that are dealing with it differently. So thank you for the session today. It was really good and insightful. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to continue working on these webinars with you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? You can unmute yourself and come forward if you'd like.
Hi, it's Janine.
Hi, Janine.
How are you?
Good.
It's always good to have a reminder of these things because with everybody being remote, there's certainly been a much more big disconnect. And there's lots of things that we could do better. But the one thing that we did right from the beginning is instead of having our weekly team meeting, because we all connected regularly in the office, we started doing a morning meeting every single day, which seemed a little over the top, but there was just so many moving pieces, especially in our business, in the financial industry. I was working easily 12 to 14 hours a day most of the time for the first month or two. So what we did is it just allowed us to connect and just what's up, what's happening, what have you, and so they could share, because maybe somebody was talking to a client and they didn't know, whereas normally when you're sitting beside each other, it happens, right? So that was very helpful. And in fact, I said, guys, do we need to do this anymore? And they all said no, they wanted to. So sometimes it's 10 minutes and sometimes it's 45. It really depends on what the topics are, but it has allowed us to talk to each other every single day. And I think that's been absolutely critical in helping.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think the one thing we realize as people is that we need other people. That's why we're called human beings. We have that touch and we have that need for touch. Even if it's not physical, we just need to feel connected. I see that Roy has unmuted. Did you want to share some thoughts, Roy?
No, thank you. That did my mistake.
That's okay. Well, hello.
Hi.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, I appreciate that people have come forward. We forgot to do a one-word check-in. And I don't know, Jenny, would you bring back the slide again and then do that Menta Meter where people are just asking for that one word? Because I want you to check out.
It might be too. It might take too long for me to do it.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries. So I want you to mentally think about that checkout word. Has it changed? Did this help you put some things in perspective and make some changes? I want you to think about the one activity that has been the one that really helps you distress the most. Okay, so as we're checking out now, I want to just do one little exercise. I I want you to think of that one activity, whether that's walking the dog, exercising, having that glass of wine. So I want to help you with mindfulness. I think of all the things that I've learned um, that I feel that can have the most impact is the mindfulness. Mindfulness means being present in the moment. So I'm going to get you to close your eyes. And I'm going to get you to think about that one thing that really, really helps you. So imagine that you're doing that now. It's walking the dog, it's swimming, it's having that glass of wine, watching TV. While you're doing it, how do you feel? Are you feeling relaxed? Are you feeling calm? Is it soothing? Wherever you are, what is happening? Is there, breathe in the air. Is there, what energy do you feel when you're experiencing this? How's your breathing? Is it slowing down? Is it speeding up? What is your body saying? Is your gut doing anything? Is it Are you breathing? Are you relaxed? What do you smell? Just think about it. Is this calming you and soothing you and relieving your tensions? Mindfulness is staying present. It's understanding what is happening. I'm getting you to be mindful of the event that makes you feel the most relaxed, the most distressed. So use that. Open your eyes now and remember to practice things that will help you stay in the zone. So thank you everybody for being part of our session, and stay safe, stay connected to your energy, and try to keep yourself in a position where you're optimally stressed so that you can refuel yourself and stay healthy during this very, very difficult time. So thank you very much for joining.